Okay, go. Schedule management, lot to cover, so let's make this happen. So looking again at our overview slide here we had the business documents which told us why we need this project from a strategic perspective and what the benefits were. And then we have our 5 process groups. We are looking at schedule now. And notice that schedule is only in planning and in the control process. So that's where we'll focus our attention for schedule management. Now, the processes are many. There's plan, schedule management, which is your typical how you develop the methodology, the detailed approach for all the processes. Then you'll define the activities. Notice in scope, we called them work packages, right? Now, whenever you see the term activities, we are only in the schedule. So we're going to define the activities, and then we're going to put them in a right order based on relationships. That's called sequence activities. Then we got to figure out how much time each one will take. That's called estimate durations. What are the work periods? Then we're going to develop the schedule, which is going to give us our schedule baseline. Yes, I got my second now baseline of my 3. And then I'm going to, of course, control. Okay. This is a one-slide summary of everything that's going to go on. We're going to select the schedule model, right? Which is going to be a precedence diagramming method, or PDM. And that a PDM, it comes in 2 forms: critical path method, CPM, or critical chain, CCM. We will study and do critical path method during this course. Just be aware of critical chain in theory only for the exam. Then we are going, once we select the scheduling model, which is going to be a PDM model, we're going to develop our schedule. First, we're going to, and that's going to produce a project schedule. So we're going to create a network diagram, which is not going to have any durations in it. It's just going to diagram the sequence. It's going to take our activities, which are these boxes, and put them in the order that they should flow. Then we're going to develop the schedule. So each node, these are called nodes, these little blue boxes. Each node is going to have a box like this. It's going to have your early start date, your early finish date, your late start, your late finish, your activity name. I usually just call it A, B, C, D, E, F, etc. And your duration right here, and your float. We'll figure those out later. But then we're going to develop the schedule by adding durations, and that's going to be called a network. We're going to add those durations to this network diagram, and then we're going to do a network analysis, schedule network analysis. We're going to, once we added times, analyze that schedule. Is this really the best possible approach? Do we have the relationships right? Then I'm ready to publish my schedule, which is my baseline. Now just be aware that the schedule can look like a bar chart, which is a bunch of bars, or a Gantt chart, or even a milestone chart, depending on the audience that I'm talking to. If I'm talking to senior executives, I'm probably going to use a milestone chart. So just be aware of that. Now, just as a review, that network diagram, notice there are no times here. It's just a network diagrammed. It's about the relationships, and this is an output of sequence activities. So I have all these activities on which are called nodes, A node, B node, C node, and I am sequence them. Then I take this, do network analysis, so I figure out the duration, and I end up filling in this box for each one. And then I do my network analysis. Now I can analyze my network based on not just the relationships, but on the time it takes also. How could I do it better? Are there other ways to do this? And so we want to realize that there is an important scope to schedule connection. Remember, scope left off with the work packages. I said the work packages were the lowest level of the work breakdown structure. That's where scope ends. We still decompose from the work packages, but now they're called activities, and that's all schedule management, right? I just wanted to go over that. Also, I wanted to say, be very careful, not just with scope, but with schedule, right? An unrealistic schedule is the project manager's fault. So, this is, I wanted to show you in Agile. Here's how they deal with scope. Now we were talking predictive or waterfall project management, which largely your exam is based on, but it may also have some agile comments or questions, right? And so in predictive, I'm laying out all the scope by phases. In agile, I'm going to have a product owner and they're going to list a bunch of stories and put them in a backlog, right? And they're going to pile up. So these are the story cards themselves, right? I'm going to pile them up, and that's called the product backlog. That, in essence, is the scope they are working on. So my first process is plan scope management. It's got my typical inputs, tools, and outputs. But notice one of the tools now is called rolling wave planning, right? And this is where I plan at a high level, and I plan for the long-term schedule, and in the near term, I plan in detail. So I may not have all the information I need for long-term. And so we'll do rolling wave planning. I will plan in detail right now what I've got. And I will plan at a high level right now, awaiting further detail. So after I plan schedule management, I want to define activities. Remember, the activities are made up of these nodes, right? This is node A, this is node F, right? So each node is an activity. And so what I'm going to do is take the work breakdown structure and further decompose it into activities, which are not adding more scope. It's just taking the scope and breaking it down into activities that I can schedule. And notice I will also again use rolling wave planning, right? This is a form of, we had this term in the first part of this course, progressive elaboration, right? Continuing to detail is what that means, progressive elaboration. And that's, of course, used in Agile and predictive, then project management. Now my outputs, of course, if I'm defining activities as a process up here, my outputs are my activity list, and with that come activity attributes. It's just like the work in scope. We had the work breakdown structure and the work breakdown structure dictionary. They go together. So does the activity list and the activity attributes. Look at the activity. See, there's a list of these, A, B, C, D, etc. There's not a lot of information here, is there? Where is that information at? Those details are the activity attributes, and that's why it goes with the activity list. I will also, one of the few places, define the milestone list as the project manager, and I can do change requests also. This is a sample. So here's your node, single node. It's an activity A. And these would be examples in red of the attributes that go with it. Things that I just can't say in a simple box, but you need to know, right? It's just an example, those in red. Now, an output of defined activities I mentioned were the milestones. Milestones have zero duration. Notice they're just points on a chart. There are no beginning or end. There's no duration. They are a significant event that have zero duration. We often use SMART criteria to describe them. And SMART stands for specific, measurable, assignable, realistic, and time framed. Okay, and these triangles are an example of project milestones. Now, so far we have planned, then we defined activities, Now we can take these individual activities, A, B, through F, etc., and put them in order. That's sequencing, and that gives us a network diagram. Notice it's a network that's diagrammed. Nothing here but relationships. How these activities should follow in a relationship perspective. Okay? After part of sequence activities, of course, has its inputs, tools, and techniques, and outputs. It's typical inputs here, but your tools include 4 dependencies, and these need to be memorized. I've got a chart on this coming up. They are mandatory, discretionary, internal, or external dependencies. And notice they have a predecessor and a successor. Each one. So B has a predecessor of A and a successor of C, right? And we can apply leads and lags. If I apply a lead, I'm actually going to accelerate an activity based on its normal start time. And a lag means I'm going to direct that activity be delayed for various reasons, right? So my output of sequencing them, putting them in order, is this project schedule network diagram. Now I have this picture of the network diagram, how it should flow. So remember, the dependencies are mandatory, discretionary, external, and internal. Mandatory is hard logic. Has to be done by law or by contract, or it's the way it is. A discretionary is called soft logic, and that's really just a best practice. Now, if it's an external dependency, that means there's input from outside the project to do it a certain way. And an internal dependency is from within the project, something that is driving us to do it that way. And of course, dependencies can be both discretionary and internal, for example. Now, there are also relationships. After dependencies, I have relationships. So here's some more examples of dependencies. And that's common in predictive project management. And also in predictive are relationships. They are 4 of them. Finish to start, which is most common. Finish to finish, start to start, and start to finish. That's least common. I'll go over those in a minute. But for now, in the agile environments, the project manager, or scrum master as we call it, they work with that product owner to define the priorities, or those story cards that you're going to use that we've been talking about. The scrum master is working with the product owner to define the story cards. And that's how you sequence in Agile. Now, I mentioned those relationships, right? Here's finish to start, so I have to finish the predecessor before I can start the next or successor activity. In start to start, I have to start the predecessor before I can start the successor. In finish to finish, I have to finish the predecessor before I can finish the successor, and start to finish the same way. 4 relationships. Here are the definitions, and they must be known for the exam. You can read more about these in 6.3.2.1 of the PMBOK guide. Remember, finished start is most common, and you will do the math of that on the exam. We'll talk about it in class. And start to finish is most rare. Again, I mentioned there are leads and lags. I'm going to take a short break. We will come back to leads and lags in the network diagram when we come back.